The introduction of antibiotics in animal feed has contributed exponentially to the antibiotic resistance crisis in the world today. The FDA has recognized these conditions are a cause of antibiotic resistance in humans, yet have done little to address the problem. Every year, antibiotic-resistant bacteria affects at least 2 million people, killing more than 23,000 of those. It is now becoming increasingly difficult to treat this kind of bacteria due to their developed resistance to antibiotics. In 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered the first antibiotic, penicillin. This was a revolutionary discovery at the time because infections were no longer life-threatening and could be prevented with antibiotics. However, we were warned that the more antibiotics we used, the less effective they would become. Today, there are a number of factors contributing to the declining effectiveness of antibiotics. The food industry is a leading cause of antibiotic-resistant bacteria because resistant genes are developing in animal bacteria that get transferred to humans due to improper handling procedures.
When they were being butchered or then being handled, they were not handled correctly, then they carry the animal bacteria with them. And if you are sort of have a cut when you are handling, you're not handling right, or you have a cut or abrasive on your skin, that you might pick up the bacterial infection from the food source that you were normally okay with it. But the problem with that is then this bacteria from the animal food source is they already carry the antibiotic resistant marker. So then that kind of you can't really treat the human infection with the same antibiotic.
We spoke with environmental science teacher Laura Dinnerman about what the government could do to step in on the problem.
Well, one of the things that I'd really like to see happen is I would like to see the removal of antibiotics from the food system, food production system. What we're seeing right now is a good 80% of antibiotics are actually going into food production.
The FDA has recently implemented a voluntary plan for animal pharmaceutical companies to remove antibiotics that promote animal growth from animal feed. The new plan may not be effective in significantly reducing the effects of antibiotic resistance because it's voluntary for pharmaceutical companies to implement.
They need to be required to be more forthcoming with information. You can collect data on that kind of thing. You can find out which animals specifically are sick. You can require that to be reported before antibiotics are given, and you can require that the industry get prescriptions for those medications for sick animals rather than just making the whole thing voluntary.
In 2010, the House Commerce Subcommittee on Health held a hearing on the threat of antimicrobial resistance. Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, was questioned by Representative John Dingell on whether or not antibiotics in animal feed that isn't regulated poses a threat to our health.
There's the purpose for my question. If we're putting too much in the animal feed, not using it wisely, and don't have any particular constraints on its use, we're obviously increasing a risk, if a risk there is. Is that right? Clearly the answer to that's yes.
So if Congress doesn't act, what kinds of impacts are we looking at?
We're looking at more and more antibiotic-resistant drugs, a greater number of disease, people dying from things that they don't need to die from, childbirth, infections that would, in the past, historically in my lifetime, would have been minor.
Normally, when you get a cut, you don't really go to the doctor immediately unless it's really deep cut. You need a suture to sew it back. But then when the infection started, you're probably not too concerned about it until much later on. Then you can't stop the infection. Then you go to the doctor, and by the time, I would say, yeah, a week to 2 weeks, that's the timeline. Then the doctor would say, we have to cut it off because we can't prevent the bacteria from entering your bloodstream.
Once the resistant bacteria is out there, how is it spreading so quickly?
Okay, so right now the travel is more not as restricted before, so the air travel goes from back and forth, so it's actually more easily from people who travel to the United States, even though they're healthy. There are some commensal bacteria that travel with them, and they also carry the antibiotic resistant marker here, and they could, just leave it behind.
Major drug companies are moving away from developing new antibiotics in favor of more profitable pharmaceutical drugs. We'll be on the verge of a major health crisis unless the FDA develops new guidelines that encourages these companies to continue their antibiotic research and take other courses of action to prevent what could possibly be the beginning of a nightmare.